Hello, hello, everyone. Happy
Hi.
Tuesday. They're better than Tuesdays. Nico says hello. Drop in the chat where you are zooming in from. He's growling at his sister. Let me take a look at the chat. Kentucky, Philly Burbs, Wichita, Kansas, Ohio, ah, Idaho, Shelly. We heard from her last week. Grand Rapids, South Philly, Charleston, South Carolina, Wichita, Kansas. Is that two different people or are you in the same household? If you're in different households, you should connect. Um, all right, so we're gonna get started. Two different. All right, well, definitely message one another and connect. That's awesome. And sorry about everything happening in Kansas, folks, and in the world. Uh, so a quick, again, liking to start these out with gratitude and both what we're proud of and grateful for. We've been doing these LQAs since August when Kim Davis filed the SCOTUS cert requesting cert from the Supreme Court around marriage equality, and everybody was freaking out, and there was significant legal reasoning as to why nobody had to worry about that particular Supreme Court issue. They never took her case, but her grant for cert. And so Jen Posick, who is on and in an airport, she has been on every single LQA with me since August through here we are, April. And so super, super, super grateful. She's at an airport. Apparently, she told me on March 27th that she wasn't going to be on today, and I hearted it. And I have no recollection of said text or having hearted it, but clearly I did. But that just goes to show in the throes of the Caravan of Hope. Um, yeah, I have zero recollection. Site texter, oh my God, what do you mean you're not going to be on? But also super, super grateful for Macklin, who is on today. They just waived, and Macklin is new to Giampolo Law Group, full-time employee around social media and marketing. And anyone who saw a video of the Caravan of Hope the month of March, if you liked it, drop a comment in the chat because that was Macklin's life. The whole month of March was from Philly. So I don't know if Tara and Jody are on today as well, but they are clients and friends, and Tara has driven cross country like 5 times, and has a fifth wheel and all the things. And so when they found out I was doing the Caravan of Hope, they offered to drive, and Jody took footage and then sent everything to Macklin, who spent all day putting those daily videos and updates for you. So we are going to let Jen go off into the world wherever they are and board their plane. And Macklin is going to take over today. So super, super grateful again. I know this was my gratitude and proud of on the last LQA, but super grateful for Jen, for Macklin, Tara, Jody, Jess, my partner, who um, there would not have been name changes throughout every single state if it were not for a team of volunteers that were updating the legal documents like literally as we went. Down to Oklahoma, where the governor changed the laws by executive order on the day that we were, on our way to, or the day before, a few days before. But the day that I made the video for Macklin about Oklahoma, that very day, the governor then issued an executive order changing the laws, and thankfully I got in touch with Macklin and we pulled that video. But I wouldn't be able to do what I do but for this awesome team of extremely dedicated people, as is evidenced by Jen in an airport right now. So I will go ahead and share my screen. No, not that. Stop share. Oh, where'd you guys go? There you go. All right, share my screen. All right. So we're going to talk about some heavy things today, generally. I long for the days when we can talk about happy, gay, queer joy things every other week, but unfortunately, that is not now. Housekeeping, I always say it, even though I don't need to, because LGBTQ folks are amazingly kind and respectful at all times. But as far as housekeeping goes, stay muted. Please be respectful and kind as people share or ask questions at the end. We're going to go over Caravan of Hope by the numbers. Not all the numbers are in, but these are still very impressive numbers and what I know now. The war on Iran. I have a radio show through iHeartMedia that it goes out widely to several million people, and the folks that green lit the segment. I do it once a month, so it's not like consistent or anything. I'm by no means, although I was told I have a really good lesbian radio voice. So there you go. But it's by no means regular, but once a month. Um, and we talk about LGBTQ issues in particular, but the focus is how what affects one person affects everyone ultimately. And so, yes, this is a segment that, I do every 2 weeks for LGBTQ folks about LGBTQ issues, but we all are citizens of the world. And, um, Trump's tweet, post, whatever on truth impacts us all, and what happens today impacts us all. So it's actually the first time that I've done something completely non-LGBTQ related, and it's only a couple slides, but it's important that if you haven't been paying attention to the news today, that you know what's happening. Deconstructing Chiles v. Salazar, which is the Supreme Court case that came down last week, overturning Colorado's ban on conversion therapy and breaking it down very, very simply. Like, what did the Supreme Court actually say? Because people are freaking out, and if your news feed is as tailored to LGBTQ issues as mine, everyone's freaking out about it. And so, wanting to dispel the myth that the Supreme Court said conversion therapy is okay. And a lot of people are confused by the fact that it was 8-1 and are, two consistently liberal justices voted to overturn the ban on conversion therapy. And like, how could that be and why? Right. So, and then life hack and then Q&A. And I am, oh, this is literally who I am. That's not what I was going to say, but so you know who I am. I am an LGBTQ estate planning attorney, have been now for 18 years. I have to update that. And founder of my law firm, which now serves folks in 39 states. I did just get an email from someone in Alaska, and I do not have co-counsel in Alaska. So that is my new challenge for this week, is to now be in 40 states, but the goal by the end of the year is to have co-counsels and be able to serve LGBTQ folks around estate planning in all 50 states. All right. So these are the high level macro numbers. And when all the numbers come in for the Caravan of Hope, it will be over 1 million as far as services rendered, which is absolutely insane. The last time I did this, if we had stopped after the very first stop in Charlottesville, we would have served more people than the entire first Caravan of Hope tour. So super, super impactful. 461 people that I met with and helped with 177 name changes and 82 gender marker changes, 76 estate planning documents, and then through Pride Plans. I don't know if everyone on this call knows about Pride Plans, but it's a platform that I created after the election where I took my 9 documents and digitized them in like a queer legal Zoom, if you will, so that they're accessible to people in all 50 states. Because again, I'm not licensed in all 50 states, and I rely on co-counsel in states in which I'm not licensed and all the things. So long before I had all of these co-counsels that I have now, immediately after the election, I wanted to provide these documents to folks. So Tom Yeager's actually someone I went to high school with in Sarasota, Florida. And neither of us knew then that we'd be gay lawyers, but 25 years later, we reconnected as gay lawyers in the world. And I brought him on as my COO at the time. And then the election happened, and I tasked him with creating this platform and going live in 1 month. And we did almost to the day, December 7th, we went live, a month after the election. And so through Pride Plans, we donated 21 of the plans. So Tom handled all of that through the Pride Plans platform. The reason they're separate is through the Caravan, we couldn't do trusts. So we kept it simple as far as simple estate planning, but through Pride Plans, folks can get the revocable living trust, which is the marriage protection and probate avoidance piece, which is so important. So, and then all in as far as what folks normally charge for these things nationwide, all of these numbers equates to 850,000. And why that will go up is these 461 people, if they had like 1 hour of time, I haven't yet added in my time, Tara and Jody's time, the time of the volunteers back home, and then these 76 wills and power and estate planning documents. My co-counsels, who I normally pay if I'm working with someone in a state in which I'm not licensed, all of these folks donated that time as well. So multiplying that along with their time. And so basically the soft side of time, I haven't yet calculated. And that's what will bring us easily over 1 million in services rendered for the Caravan of Hope. So super, super, super impressive. I say that like just the team and everything that went into making this happen. All right, so if you know a little bit about the war in Iran, you know that Trump has instituted a deadline per a post that by 8 p.m. tonight, if they don't open the strait and allow ships to go through, that an entire civilization is going to be erased. I mean, per the post. So I think that's on the next slide, exactly what he said. A whole civilization will die today if Iran doesn't make a deal to open up, that should say Hormuz by 8 p.m. tonight. And he will not give Iran more time to make the deal. And then well ahead of this deadline that was set for 8 p.m. at 10 a.m., around 10 a.m.-ish, the U.S. and Israel bombed an oil hub, 18 civilians that they know of. It's going to be a lot more than that were killed because the Iranian regime is asking for civilians to surround all of these places that the U.S. says they're going to bomb to really increase the actual civilian deaths of this. But like I said, no one really knows what he means by a whole civilization will die today. So that's sort of where we're at with the war in Iran. It's extremely irrational and unreasonable that a president would make a social post declaring this. And it kind of leads, so typically with the life hack, I do it at the end, but I'm going to do it at the beginning. Because I started out with this. And it's called the 3F reset: feel, filter, and focus. So the 3F reset is something I've been using for years. Feel your feelings, acknowledge them, actually feel, whether it's anxiety, around uncertainty. A lot of people would say, I feel uncertain. No, things are uncertain. How you feel about that is anxious, right? And so really getting clear on what the feeling is that you're feeling. Filter everything that's coming at you. Unfortunately, this social media world is dysregulating to our nervous system. At the end of the day, we just keep getting hit. I was doing LQA and I'm finding out we've bombed people and Trump's posting civilizations are going to die. Like all while I was trying to do LQA, I had to filter. I didn't think I'd mention Iran, today, but I did. I filtered that. But I did do a 3F reset today. And then I really had to focus. I had to focus. I have a lot going on, as Macklin knows, post Caravan of Hope, for being out of my office for 30 days in this week post Caravan of Hope. But today I had this whole morning had to focus on getting this LQA ready for you guys. And yet I was feeling what I was feeling, had to filter and then focus. So set a timer. It doesn't take long to do this all in. You set a timer for 2 minutes and you speak. If you're not a writer, a lot of my friends just hate the concept of journaling or writing but it is better to write because it uses both sides of your brain. And so if you're, into it, but at the end of the day, it's doing this. So that's all that matters. But writing or speaking about the emotion that you're feeling without judging it. I feel scared. I feel distracted. I feel anxious. I feel, angry. But then keep writing about it. And this can be multiple feelings. You can feel anxious and scared, and I was definitely distracted most of the morning, and right. So it can be multiple feelings, but setting the timer and only doing 2 minutes. So just like you're supposed to limit doom scrolling, also don't go on and on for 15 minutes about how horrible you feel. My mentor always says every party has an end time to it, and so do pity parties. Okay, so you're absolutely able to have a pity party at any point about anything, but just like parties end, right? You have to set a time period of when, okay, this pity party's over and or this feeling party is over. This is really important and it really, really helps. It's an automatic reset, in my opinion. Even if you just ask yourself this one question about whatever it is that has your attention in that moment. The war in Iran. Is this mine to solve? Can any of us do anything about what's going to happen today by 8 p.m.? No. Like if you do nothing else, if you just ask yourself these questions and then figure out that the majority, almost 90% of the time, it's ours to witness. Right? So is this mine to prepare for? Is there something about your preparation, again, that would change what may happen by 8 o'clock tonight? No. And getting clear on what is within your control and what is not, ultimately. Or is this for me to witness? Right. And so then that separates what you can act on, what you can prepare for, and what you need to stop doom scrolling about. And then focus. Choose one concrete action in the next 24 hours, not 10. So whereas in the first one with the feeling, you can feel many, many feelings, right? Not 10, one. Just one, because you'll absolutely achieve it. Text a friend and tell them about the 3Fs. Book a therapy session. Go for a walk, meal prep. Move $100 into savings. I just had to throw this in there. Do your LGBTQ estate planning. And turn off notifications after 8 o'clock. All right. So these are the 3Fs. Again, feel, filter, focus. Set a timer for 2 minutes. And then filter it. And lastly, focus on something else that will move the needle in your life in some way, shape, or form. All right, so before we delve into the substantive side of things, I want to open it up. I'll stop sharing. I want to open it up to shares. I saw someone had their hand raised at some point. Who had their hand raised? Let me change. Well, I don't see anyone's
I
hands
think it
raised
was
now,
Cece and
but
Amy.
who is it?
I think it was Cece and Amy.
It was an
CC and
accident.
what's that?
It was an accident.
Okay. All right. Anyone want to share either what you're grateful for, proud of, anything about the three Fs? All right. We will jump in. No one ever has to feel like they need to share, or they have to share rather. All right. So the Supreme Court case that came out last week, SCOTUS held that Colorado's ban on conversion therapy is unconstitutional. First Amendment case on the regulation of professional speech and Colorado, any state's ability to protect minors from an extremely harmful practice. So the arguments from Colorado's side, they're saying that that the law is meant to protect minors from harm. Major medical organizations widely agree, from the American, Psychiatric Association to just the epitome apex of any and all or medical or and psychological organizations have said that conversion therapy is 100% ineffective and harmful. That it regulates professional conduct and not speech, but that what's happening inside of the therapy room is professional conduct. They're acting as a therapist in that moment through their words, so that it's really acting, the conduct of therapizing someone and not about the words that they're using. And she was saying that as a person of faith, her ability to provide this counseling speech and speaking what she thinks was being infringed upon. So the holding in one very clear sentence is that the Supreme Court decided that Colorado's law, as applied to Chiles, the counselors' talk therapy, violated the First Amendment because it regulated speech based on her viewpoint, and that the lower courts used the wrong level of constitutional scrutiny. We went over scrutiny ad nauseum the other day, strict, intermediate, rational basis, and that it should have been strict scrutiny, the highest level of all scrutiny, and that if applied strict scrutiny to that law, that it would be deemed unconstitutional. And so therefore it remanded it back to the state of Colorado for it to look at the statute again. And so all the Supreme Court can do is remand it back down, but ultimately say that they used the wrong scrutiny. So LGBTQ folks, and this is what I'm getting a lot of, especially from other lawyers, is that LGBTQ folks are overreacting, right? That the freakouts through the scrolling, that everybody is overreacting and not looking at this legally and objectively, but because legally, the last bullet point there, the opinion is about constitutional drafting of the statute, and that the opinion didn't make a moral decision on whether or not conversion therapy is right or wrong, right? But at the end of the day, this holding is still extremely dangerous, and folks will be injured as a result while we figure out next steps of still regulating this behavior. So, and it's not going to happen overnight, although Colorado anticipated this. I predicted this back in October. I think it was our September, the oral arguments happened in October. So one of our September LQAs, we went over this case in detail. And I predicted then, they said they would issue the opinion. The Supreme Court themselves said they would issue the opinion in June. And they came out with it really early. And probably because it was 8-1. Like, it was a very easy case for them to decide. And we talked about back in September that this would probably happen. So this is not news for those that were paying attention to the oral arguments and sort of the legal question. And so Colorado obviously knew that it would likely be deemed unconstitutional. California, and so states have, starting in the new year, already drafting new laws that will address this, but still not going to happen overnight. And there are going to be states in which there is no attempt at a ban. There are 28 states that have tried to address this out of 50, so the other 32, right, will continue to be the wild, wild west as far as conversion therapy for minors goes. So what the court did not say that conversion therapy is acceptable, good, effective, all the things, medically sound. It did not say that states are powerless to, in some way, protect minors, maybe not to ban conversion therapy in the way that we think of a banning statute, but that does not mean that they're powerless to protect minors. And the court did not ban physical or aversive practices like conversion therapy camps, which were very popular. We're actually sending people away for summers, because again, these are minors. So for summers at a time in order to undergo conversion therapy. That is conduct, and that can be banned. That has nothing to do with speech. This is talk therapy at the end of the day. Now, why the law failed. So again, I tried to really, really simplify this and not, in the last LQA, I had to dive into the weeds around strict scrutiny and intermediate scrutiny and all the legal words around it. And, even in law school, constitutional law, I wanted to stick a pen in my eye. Like, it was so but with this particular case, we can be very macro and just explain exactly what happened simply. So Colorado banned counseling that tried to change a minor's sexual orientation or gender identity. The law expressly allowed counseling that supported exploration of one's gender identity or sexual orientation. The court said that meant that the law allowed one message to go one way to minors, but that the opposite message could not go to minors, that you should not be gender diverse. You should not be transgender, non-binary. Only affirming speech. In the majority's view, that was viewpoint discrimination. So the First Amendment issue is that the case involved speech. She does only talk therapy, and that's the next bullet point. The counselor only uses talk therapy. She does not engage in any physical interventions, gay camps, and medication and pray the gay away, or anything like that. The court said speech does not become unprotected just because the state labels it as treatment. This is where the dissent categorically disagrees, right? So it was 8-1. The one, Ketanji Jackson, the lone dissenter, that's where she hung her hat, is right there, that it was not speech, that it was conduct, that it was treatment, the therapizing. So because the law targeted speech by viewpoint, the court said serious constitutional scrutiny was required. So the Colorado law in question, again, Colorado statute defined conversion therapy as a practice or treatment that attempts to change someone's sexual orientation or gender identity. It applied directly to licensed providers working with minors, and the statute carved out counseling. This is the key there, that provided acceptance, support, identity exploration, and assistance with gender transitioning. And that carve out is what SCOTUS deemed to be viewpoint based. And a lot of folks that I talked to over the last week, and myself included, having to revisit something since basically law school, is what does viewpoint mean? So SCOTUS said that drafting was the problem. So that the majority said Colorado's law did more than regulate treatment standards. It allowed counseling only in one direction and prohibited counseling in the other direction. And that was classic viewpoint discrimination. Justice Kagan, joined by Sotomayor, agreed that the law was unconstitutional. And that's a lot of folks are having issues wrapping their mind around that. On Instagram, I don't know if you follow that. I forget exactly what it's called, like the middle child something, silent middle child. But so it's this person who says they're middle child, and they explain, the younger or older sibling will call this person and ask them a complicated question that they break down like very simply. And so they did a whole video just on like what happened to Kagan and Sotomayor on this issue, like how are they pro conversion therapy. And so she emphasized, Kagan in particular, that content-based legislation, as opposed to a viewpoint-neutral law, would have gone completely different. And that matters because even they did not read this case as endorsing conversion therapy. They saw it as a problem with how the statute was written. Okay. Jackson's dissent, on the other hand, says states have broad power to regulate medical professions and that it's their job, ultimately, as the state governing board. Not every spoken treatment becomes protected speech, so that there is precedent for there to be, and we'll go over that in the next slide, treatment that is not protected speech. So why wouldn't this fall in that? Colorado acted based on medical consensus and harm prevention, that it's their duty to do this, that they have to protect the people of Colorado, the minors of Colorado who can't protect themselves. If not the state that these kids live in, then who? Right? And that all sounds, so personally, I agree it was unconstitutional, and how the statute was written violates the First Amendment. So I'm with Sotomayor and Kagan on this, and I can see what Ketanji Jackson is saying here, but two things can be true. It can harm minors, and the law can be written unconstitutionally as violating someone's free speech. So examples of Jackson's fears: informed consent requirements could face more First Amendment challenges than they already do. Licensing boards may have less power to punish dangerous talk-based therapy. Think of things that are dangerous that a therapist could say that has nothing to do with conversion therapy. If we were to take this and say, as far as speaking goes, in other contexts, what that could potentially mean. Malpractice style, we'll delve into this a lot as a means of protecting children moving forward, a viable means of protecting kids moving forward using malpractice, but malpractice style regulation of verbal medical advice may be harder to defend. States may struggle to enforce standards of care, and then the ripple effect, as I alluded to, could extend far beyond conversion therapy. And all of that is also true. Again, these things can all be true, and we need to figure that out. Can Colorado fix the law? Right? That's where my mind went to. Just rewrite it. Like, what's the big deal? If it was deemed viewpoint based, then let's rewrite the law and make it viewpoint neutral, and go from there. Rewrite the law so it's not framed around favored versus disfavored messages. Focus on the outcome, regardless of how an outcome is achieved. So again, skipping over the messaging piece and focus on the goal is to change this person's gender identity and sexual orientation. Permit counseling that is neutral and does not seek to direct, again, the patient towards any particular sexual orientation or gender identity. Shift away from a speech ban to civil liability, malpractice model. based on harm. That's truly where we're going to see a shift moving forward. Keep separate the bans on the physical piece, the camps, the detainment centers, until someone sending them away until they admit or say that the therapy worked and I'm not gay or I'm not trans. So keep the therapy piece and the physical detainment centers as separate. And then why this is so hard. Why drafting a true conversion therapy ban to be viewpoint neutral is close to impossible. Because the harm is in fact in the viewpoint that conversion therapy is wrong. So this next iteration of laws may be a law that doesn't have the word ban in it because we can't ban any one particular type of therapy through speech. But down here, truly neutral law may have to regulate coercion. You're trying to coerce someone to be something they're not. Deception, trying to deceive, trick, manipulate, confuse someone into thinking they're someone they're not. And fraud is a big one, just that these practices don't work. So if you engage in them and you say that they're effective, aren't you engaging in fraudulent behavior? Right? Consumer fraud statutes. You're not allowed to do that. As lawyers, we're not permitted to say, that is a slam dunk case. We win every time. We can't say that. That's malpractice. That's speech, but I can't say that because that's literally untrue and therefore fraud, and we're not allowed to lie. Right? So there may be bans built into something that we can never call a conversion therapy ban. And again, that's really hard to wrap your mind around or feel like we've won based on this. But just rewrite it where my mind went back in September. You know, well, so who cares if the Supreme Court finds it to be unconstitutional? Just rewrite it, and they better start working now, meaning back in September, on rewriting this law because it will be deemed unconstitutional the way that it's written. Much harder legally than it sounds. So, is there a world where she's not able to practice conversion therapy? Yes. And that's where the huge disconnect, at least in my news feed, is, where folks are freaking out. And yes, rightfully so, because there will be harm done, to children while we figure this out. But there is a way to still prevent the practice of conversion therapy from happening. So completely rewriting the statute or using other statutes that are currently in existence around consumer fraud, coercion, deception, all of the things. Licensing boards discipline conduct that is not pure speech, such as, again, the detainment centers. If she engages in fraud, misrepresentation, there is an easy argument to make scientifically that this is fraudulent. And then that's where the medical board will step in because she's a licensed provider. It just can't be banned by the state itself in the way that it has been. False advertising, right? That's really dependent on how it's obviously phrased. And then if employers, insurance companies, professional associations refuse to credential or support the practice, medical boards can do that. And if, again, the law is rewritten in a viewpoint neutral way, but that's really hard. So all of the other ways are much easier. So Colorado saw this coming as well. They already have a bill moving through the legislature as of today. As of April 2nd, it passed the Colorado House, and for the third reading of the statute, again, it creates a civil cause of action for people injured by sexual orientation or gender identity change efforts. So again, not calling it conversion therapy per se, but just a civil cause of action, allows claims against therapists, supervisors, and negligent employers, and allows economic and non-economic and then exemplary damages, which is like sort of punitive damages above and beyond, because again, these are minors, right? We can't really necessarily come up with, in that moment, to an 8-year-old, the economic damage to an 8-year-old, 12-year-old. But how many states are impacted? 28 in total. 23 states plus DC had laws completely similar to Colorado's. All right, so they will, depending on where they are, will all be challenged by some organization. I'm sure the Alliance Defense Fund is working on that as we speak. 4 states in 1 territory had partial restrictions rather than full. And so again, this is as of March 30th. And so this case puts all of these statutes into question. What will happen? They're all vulnerable. States will have to review whether their statutes are written as viewpoint-based. They all are. Because we've talked about this on other LQAs in the past, where copy-paste legislation. Don't Say Gay was created in Florida, and then almost overnight, 13 other states had Don't Say Gay bills, because they just take the work done by one and then throw it into the House for passing in their state, and then they're, they all get passed. So they're all vulnerable. They're all similar to Colorado's. Bans are being challenged as we speak. And again, some states are trying to get ahead of it. California is getting ahead of it. And really, they created the model. So what needs to happen next in states that aren't already addressing it? They need to address it right away. They need to go and audit their state conversion ban for viewpoint discrimination, which they will all have. Draft back up civil liability and malpractice models. That's going to be the key moving forward. Preserve the bans, separate them out. So all of these 28 statutes that exist, the partial bans, those 5 states, they have the partial ban on the physical component, the aversion therapy piece. Really expanding survivor remedies and the filing windows. This is true of sexual abuse of minors. That a minor, since a minor can't file a lawsuit themselves legally, the statute of limitations on sexual assault of a minor is then 30 years after, in some states, after that child turns 18. Because just because they turned 18 doesn't mean they can cognize and understand what happened to them, or even the damage that it has caused them, because they're still late to the frontal, cortex hasn't even fully developed till 26. But you expect them to file a lawsuit within 2 years of turning 18. So statute of limitations need to be completely revised around this topic. Tightening licensing rules around coercion, deception, and false claims. All of these false claims or deception and coercion laws are all in the Consumer Fraud Act, like Lemon Law, right? You sold me a crappy car, not you injured me with the words that came out of your mouth as a therapist. None of these deception statutes are meant to actually capture this, because they were captured in the conversion therapy bans that we've had for years, right? So really looking at what we're trying to regulate, and then what statutes and laws are already in existence that we can then place them in. And then keep the messaging super clear that the Supreme Court did not in any way say that conversion therapy is okay. So again, we've sort of alluded to all of these, but just to make it super clear, what tools these 28 states that already care about banning conversion therapy have is they can still ban non-speech conduct. They can help patients and folks sue for malpractice or negligence, use the fraud and false advertising laws that already exist, tighten informed consent rules, revise statutes to be viewpoint neutral, and limit practice through licensing and credentialing pathways. So again, having the psychiatric and medical boards limit practice at that level and not the state of Colorado, the state of California. So California, also knowing that this was going to go this way, has sort of the model and what Colorado used. So again, this is the copy-paste model of legislation that needs to be used moving forward. And I mean, extending the filing claims, including claims by people who are minors until the age of 40. That's awesome. That's not quite the 30 years, but 22 years is still a lot more than what, right? What it doesn't exist. There is no, as of now. So, and then explicitly treating this as a response, even though it had to have started months ago. This was in response to the Supreme Court holding that they knew was going to come down. And again, the template for other states to copy. So the biggest impact moving forward, the main takeaway from this is that the entire fight and how to protect minors from conversion therapy practices has to shift away from a ban on talk therapy in particular to their liability for doing so. Obviously, what that suggests, not even what it suggests, what it means is the talk will happen to the minor will be impacted negatively, and then they have to sue for the negative impact. And that's why this is still so important to be discussed, is that the behavior, the speech, can still happen within the four walls of the therapy room. So can the state ban this speech? Can the state impose consequences for harmful professional conduct in a viewpoint-neutral way? And so the next generation of litigation will be on exactly that. And we'll also see other litigation around the 27 other states, and parse it as states try to make it viewpoint neutral and ban this. So for the immediate moving forward, immediately, we'll only have liability at our disposal and suing for the damages caused while trying to fight to ban it, but not in a ban, if that makes any sense. All right, perfect place to end it. Next LQA is April 21st. Again, don't know the topic. We were not supposed to get this holding until June, and it came down on March 31st, and complete shock to everyone that it came that early. So I never really know what we're going to talk about, but April 21st at noon is the next LQA. So let me, all right, any questions? Let me look at the chat. When I was a practicing...
Jim had his hand raised for a while. Jim Bush.
Jim, go ahead.
Thanks, Angela. I did. I think you answered it. I was trying to understand how what approach would work. It sounds like the approach of the outcomes is what we need to fight, not the approach of the inputs of the actual. I mean, it's hard to argue against free speech, but what it does to someone, we can argue. And you spoke more about that. That's why I lowered my hand, but it's important for me to understand.
Yeah, no, and same, in wrapping my mind around the two main things is, so how do we still ban this from happening in some way, shape, or form, right? How do we prevent it from happening? And then why was it so hard to rewrite the statute to be viewpoint neutral? What does it mean to be viewpoint neutral as it relates to this? And it wasn't until I really started researching that I was like, oh, right. Like the whole statute is a viewpoint. As it's currently written, it is just one massive viewpoint that engaging in conversion therapy is harmful, as opposed to focusing on the harmful piece.
Right.
Exactly. So yeah.
That's really helpful to understand. Thank you for clearly giving us that understanding. That was really helpful.
Absolutely. Kylie.
Hi, yeah. So two thoughts that I have on this. One is I'm just imagining all of the ways therapists can get around this. I mean, and immediately I'm thinking, okay, well, they can uh, go the coaching route, so then they no longer, have like a lot of the rules that therapists have, and then they can switch to private pay, so they don't have to worry about insurance companies de-credentialing them. So then, I mean, let's say then a parent hires somebody for their kid, and they're like, "Oh, this is just my friend Jim, who's going to hang out with you for a while." Like, then what are we kind of looking at pursuing like coercion then? But then it's like, where's the coercion if it's like your free speech to think that I don't know, but does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And so the piece there is that number one, you're number one of two is happening, has always happened. This law could only govern licensed professionals ultimately. So that's why you still meet people today in these states, especially where I am in Pennsylvania, sort of the Lancaster area and like sort of the Pennsylvania, area that and why these camps can exist and why they had to then easily be able to ban the physical detainment centers and these summer camps, and I call them detainment centers, but really summer camps and all of the things. And the other piece where I thought you were going was not so much a coach, but yes, there will be more therapists who will say, okay, this is just more than currently exists now, right? That will go the coaching route, but the coaching route has been used to get around the bans to begin with. So that may just increase. But where I thought you were going was the religious route, the pray the gay away, that if we find a way, because really what she was saying was her religious freedom, not just First Amendment speech, but both components of the First Amendment were being impeded on because religiously she believes this. Her viewpoint, right, was really is still religious based. And so how can you ever then take away someone's ability to speak their religious viewpoint? And so this was a narrow holding that didn't have to address that because they just said at the end of the day, this is an unconstitutional violation because it's a viewpoint based law. They didn't have to further, but this new line of litigation will eventually get to that piece, is where does someone's First Amendment speech like begin and end around like the religious component of it. So we ban it all and then they just come out and say, but these are my religious beliefs. Then what do we do with that?
Okay.
Because there's a lot of religious practices out there that under the guise of religion that are harmful or helpful. Plant medicine in this country, ayahuasca and other things like are happening all over this country through churches that they've created and that they offer the sacrament of this plant that you then ingest. And then, yes, it does this thing to you that the government deems to be illegal. But they can absolutely offer psilocybin, ayahuasca, and all of the things through a church.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks. So then I guess the second thought I had wouldn't really apply. Then I was going to say, like, well, then can I just go and Google like every, LCSW or PsyD who's like doing this and just report them to the licensing board and just, have a week of just being an asshole like that? And like, but that they're way smarter than that. They're not doing that, it sounds like. So
Right,
okay.
exactly. All right. Who, I think I saw one more. Oh, CA.
You want to do this now? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to bring something to everyone's attention. First off, I'm CA. If you haven't ever seen me on here, I've probably been on every one of these LQAs. Recently, I actually was diagnosed with something called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Apparently, it's something that actually can happen in women. I'm actually one of the younger folks that it has happened to. And in the light of Giving Tuesday, I am actually in the process of raising money for the American Heart Association. And I talked to Angela about this and see if any of you could help. I am in the process of a huge lifestyle change. I went from being very sedentary to now walking anywhere from 1 mile to 2 miles a day. My diet has changed drastically. And it's kind of important to me that I take the proper steps so that I don't die early. Apparently, the morbidity rate on this is pretty high, especially in women. So yeah, that's all I have to really contribute today. But here I have the link in the chat. Just send it over.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to donate. Yes. Thank you for sharing. CA didn't know what my life hack was going to be today. And so when she texted me and asked if she could share that to everyone, specifically around trying to raise money for the research around this, I said, absolutely. And it's a perfect example of feeling the feelings, filtering through all of the information that she's learning about the disease and the fear and the morbidity rate and the anxiety and all of the things, right? And then focusing and doing things. And she shared with me the other day, like hasn't been drinking for months, and so in food choices, but like lifestyle change, moving, not drinking, what she's eating, like actually focusing on the things that she can control, because that's the only thing that she can control about this, right? And so and being a part of this heart walk is another example of that. So thank you very much. Sending you only a healing energy. We all are, like CC and Amy said. And perfect way to close what is and was a very heavy LQA. I'm thinking of all of us globally around the world with this 8 p.m. deadline thing that Trump has issued, and obviously in the conversion therapy, messaging around and what we can do, what states can do. And so I'm really glad you decided to end with it, CA, instead of earlier when we did the life hack. So again, everybody do something around the 3
I've lost about 8 pounds so far.
Oh, I bet.
I have to lose probably a total of 40 pounds to get to a healthy weight.
And your wife is supportive of these lifestyle changes?
Of course she is.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And happy Tuesday. They're better than Tuesdays. Bye, guys.